Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us once again. This is our sixth episode with Blue Crystalline Phoenix. Blue, how are you?
I am well today. How are you, Mike?
I'm very good. Thank you. Now, for those who are just joining us for the first time, please introduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are.
I am a commander in Space Force in the Extraterrestrial Unit Department. I'm Unified Federation President and here to rectify what needs to be placed for the quantum age. As seventh seal in a Zeta Reticuli inculated species of a hyperdimensional frequency.
All right. So, a lot has been going on lately in your world. Let me know some of the latest things. Let me know what's going on.
Well, delegated infrastructure. Currently, Federation still stands that there will be a placement code for a cryptocurrency or a credit currency standard placed upon this planet. That type of standard I already innovated on Facebook about what on better protocols need to be placed for fair trade and credits for humankind. But this currently is being processed behind the scenes, and not just with Federation, but others of the Q standard age.
All right. And what can the average person expect from this? Like what type of time frame are we talking about? How is this going to impact the everyday person?
Well, it goes into the acquisition and maintaining what the Federation needs to stand for here upon this planet. As to what I put in preliminary skills between myself and you, what needs to be obtained on this podcast, that also goes in onto that. That structure cannot be settled until this Federation intact modular code can be placed.
Okay. Now I see this peace treaty that you have here, the Federation Peace Treaty. Can you tell me more about that?
All right, Federation Peace Treaty as it stands. We on preliminary skills between myself and a certain Democrat 2 years ago have maintained on higher calling codes between phone statistics, online, and other acquisitions maintaining while Donald was in presidency to placing this treaty intact. There were documented 3 acquisitional effects currently for 3 leaders at that time: Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and President Xi. Now, this was dislodged because Biden's placement code itself was not currently standard for that. So there are 2 types of federations. One's a false flag. This was dislodged. This needs to be remaintained because those codes still stand. The documents were already sent out in 2 terms while he was in presidency. Those lateral terms still stand.
All right. Now I have this document in front of me here, and I'm looking, and you've got some things. You've got 8 steps or 8 things that are listed under order of commitment to right decisions. Number 1,
Yes.
bring less wars amongst each other. Okay, sounds pretty good. Number 2, take necessary steps without fail for proper decisions. Okay, work together to remove sickness. Now, this is where I have a question because recently the countries of the world, including the United States, have signed up with the WHO, the World Health Organization, and given them total autonomy. A lot of people don't realize this is happening. So there can be the WHO could come out and say that there's some sort of problem or some sort of disease or something, and they can demand everybody locked down in place or whatever. And our government doesn't have a say in it. The WHO, this other uh, branch, they've been given total autonomy over us. So if they say shut it down, lock in place, we have to listen to them. I didn't elect those people. I don't even know who those people are. These are appointed officials. So I'm skeptical of the whole thing. Is that that evil side of things working against this?
Absolutely, because this proper treaty working together on lateral terms to make health better, it's not the lateral terms that certain underscores want running currently. This is what real placement codes should be running currently. Quantum medical beds, infrastructure delegated wavelengths on proper standards for mankind, not the reversal effect of chemicals and they working together to try to take health away. There is a much better, more proper standard, not just for mankind, but also for the planet and for the species here.
All right. I see number 4, work together for the betterment of all. Okay. Those who are number 5, those who are willing to help for peace, let them. I guess that's something you never think about, that there's certain people that are striving to go places and the evil side will just try to eliminate them or squash them or quiet that whole situation down. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, like myself, they have certain abilities, certain placement codes that need to be aquafitted here, but they are being dislodged. They are being retained from that proper authority standard, from that proper lining so they can move forward for this certain age. Other than that, there's just an ultimatum of a dislodge. You're going to put it on another wavelength.
I see number 6 here, have the right technology made from the right people. That is this something kind of like what we've talked about from the med beds, where those aren't being released because we don't want that technology falling into the wrong hands?
Absolutely, absolutely. And like the anti-gravity star pod units, inquisitional effects to the Tesla ion coil inhibitors, ion inhibitor rays, rayon core inhibitor rays. We're dealing with certain infrastructures, dealing with crops that have a Teros effect that can hypermodulate through a certain infrastructure through a better water inticulated rayon effect. Holographic maintainment code. We cannot inculate all of this until those lower codings re-maintain their better authority or repurpose for the other effects to go into.
All right. I see number 7 here. Invest in bringing better jobs that will benefit all. Okay.
That goes with the quantum age, the quantum medical beds, the better sciences for mankind, not the stupidity that's currently going on, not the current standards of the stores and how it's so crowded and unmanaged. I mean, more holographic standards, more better placement codes for food. But it's just so much more possibilities for not just mankind, but to better, like I said, this planet, what needs to be out in space, and the animals too. Better equilibrium standards.
Okay. And number 8, I can get behind this as well. Invest in worldwide hunger, feed the poor. That seems like a common sense thing, but it's something that's often overlooked.
Yes, and there are many ways to do it, even including hyper advanced technologies on a quantum scale, but the right type, not the genetically modified type. There are certain quantum infrastructures delegated by the hyper-terrestrials, including Zedans, and including certain Greys, Pleiades sectors, Nordics, that have better advancement codes for humans, not what's currently being placed.
All right. And this is something that's been signed off on by President Trump, by Xi Jinping, and by Vladimir Putin. Is that correct?
Yes, those 3 placement codes I just said it does go into the same thing as the treaty. But there are more leaders than that. It was just a startup, but got, like I said, dislodged. Unfortunately, this needs to go back into proper authority again. It's got to move forward so we can move forward with all the others in effect. It can't just be dislodged like this and then maintained on a lower coding. People are suffering. That's not right.
All right. Now, what can the average person do from this point? Or there's nothing they can do. They just have to be aware of the good versus evil.
Well, like these documents have stated, and I myself am going to maintain relay to you. If there are others who are watching this and are really curious about who this person is, Democrat I was in acquisition with, prelimitory 2 years advance, and then dislodged me through a false Federation flag, you're more than happy to contact me, but they have to be on the good side. They have to be this confidential. It's got to move in forward so it can be behind. I have more documents between him and I. And I know is even though he had blocked me from Messenger, I still have an attainment code through another placement from where he's at. That's okay. That I can send. And other attributes, if I gotta look back on my phone to see what needs to be placed. More proper documentation is what I am stating. So this itself can move forward. Curious effects, you want to know what's really going on, who I was in contact, even in the emails between him and I have it. That's number one. Number two, humanity, maintain yourselves. Look through the goodness of it all. Stop lowering your codes to what you think you can rectify between Republican and Democrat when there is an in-between.
All right. And I'm looking here at some of your recent Facebook posts here, and we had talked about CERN in the past and possibly what impact that has had on us. Can you visit that again for us?
Yes, the CERN, the acquisitional effect that happened during the beginning of July already had 3 different reduction effects. These 3 different reduction effects are so-called inlate effects: aquafit, the higher energetic protocol, the aether rebound of certain DNA genetics through mankind, hyperinculating the hyper wavelengths and moving the spectrum closer to its redignified status.
All right. Now, to kind of put my next question really plain, does the government control the weather? I know that sounds out there, but does the government control the weather?
I have said me and the force itinerary for placement codes and me and the acquisitional of the extraterrestrial department deal with the weather statistics. Now, I can't tell you how it all goes, but I myself, as a delegated deity, being able to maintain on higher callings between inlay telepathy. It goes so much deeper than certain government affairs. There are higher beings that can aquafit the delegated movement structure of this planet themselves. That's all I can say, because there's too much confidential information that can not because of certain priorities of effect right now. It's best to just say weather itself can be articulated and maintained through governments, but it also can be reversed through higher beings.
Okay. Are there go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, that ends up being a good thing because it's reversing their bad effects.
Okay.
So representation, there are many wavelengths, there are many types of forms to dealing with this. Even technologies can cause this.
Okay. Now, we just unpacked a bunch of stuff here. Let me break it down a little further for some of the new viewers and listeners. Are there other folks out there like yourself?
The dignified fusel stasis of hyper-intaculated beings, cosmic core. Energy surge, yes. But we are few. But we are maintained in a cosmic grid of the calling codes that deal with the hyper-terrestrials that we delegate for. Like I myself, Zeta, Anticulated beings, or Greys. Others deal with the ladies, Nordic structures, Andromeda species. We are pretty much ground crew to the hyper-inculated crew above or below.
All right. Now, I had seen something on Facebook here recently, and of course, now that I'm trying to pull that up and use that as a tool here, I can't find it. But there was somebody is on Twitter saying they're a time traveler, and they're saying that in 2023 that someone is going to be doing some sort of deep sea dive, and they're going to come across the hatch, and this hatch is going to be opened, and it's going to open up into this internal world, this world underneath our planet, this world inside our planet. And we've touched on this before. My question is could this person really be a time traveler?
Well, I mean, if you think about myself, I'm one. And if you think about other infusals or time travelers, think about the B-52s. They're Venetians. They're time travelers, but they're inticulated through a fusel statistic. Venus, if you will. Think about other hyper beings brought into what needs to be reality set for that time frame, so they can open up and perform what needs to be placed. Oh, an awakening code. Oh, an advancement to upload what needs to be placed for that spectrum.
So what should humanity do when these first announcements come out? Because I'm fearing that when when there is more disclosure, and I see that we've been getting disclosure drips at a time, small doses at a time, because humanity, first of all, humanity couldn't take if all of a sudden a bunch of people from another planet just showed up and they were all exposed to everything all at once, right? People's heads would explode, right? They just wouldn't be able to handle it.
That's why there's articulate beings as fusels that need to do and lay that ground crew and place to awakening of a higher perspective that hey, there's more out there than just looking at these round star units up above. That hey, what's on that paranormal stasis? What's going on here? Really, it's to over expand the minds, no matter what inlay it has to go, and the possibilities are endless.
My concern is that the first set of full disclosure or the first announcements or the first exposure that we have may not be reality, may be a false flag, and maybe more of a control mechanism. Is that a possibility, or is that something you see?
Like I had stated, through Biden's protocols and laid through a certain Democrat, there are two federations, one false, one inlay good. Ours inlay good through requisition. Now, obviously, false is inlaid through theirs. Now, certain reptids, a lot of them species, and a lot of the Anunnaki stand in certain other species that do not want retrofitted on this coding.
Okay.
It needs to be maintained for humanity to really open themselves up to really, hey, what's good, what's bad, what's in between, paying attention.
I've been doing some, sometimes I go down these rabbit holes. I'll start following stuff online or on Facebook or what have you, and it'll open things up and I'll start asking myself a lot of questions. So one of the things I stumbled across was on something called knowledgetime.com. And they say, quote, the extraterrestrial presence on this planet is real and complex. So my question to you is there's a lot of different extraterrestrial beings that we've talked about in the past, from Arcturians, Palladians. There's probably a bunch I'm leaving out here, but
there are numerous types, and there's numerous type of humanoids. Like I had said, the Palladians and Nordics are more humanoid, but then there's a bilateral mix of the more extraterrestrial emplacements of grays and that. So it is kind of a mix if you think about it.
So we're not sitting here waiting for a bunch of craft to arrive. They're already here. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, the genetics go into the core main infrastructure, humankind as it is. They came here on Eden. They came here on a star unit called Eden through higher beings, mainly Palladians. Jesus Christ in leg was Palladian structure. He was half and half in requisition. They are and have those genetics. Hyper-terrestrials have been inquisiting between themselves and mankind for generations since their delegated mainframe was brought here. Currently, the rip that have caused certain space continuum time inlays because of Eden's bad inlapse between its requisition between here and the hyper realms. The dark matter symmetry codes have to be reducted and reformed. Other than that, the hyper-terrestrials are currently in mainframe into maintaining this processing code. So humans are more aware, okay, there's more paranormal stasis going on that they perceive.
So the likelihood is more so not so much that, and here's what I thought in the past. I thought, well, what a great place if extraterrestrials are already here. What a great place to hide or be not seen when they don't want to be seen is in the ocean. 2/3 of the planet is covered by water. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I've also learned from our discussions in the past that they may be hiding in plain sight. They may be interdimensional beings that we can't perceive for some reason. So right next to me right now could be an extraterrestrial being and me not be able to perceive that. Is that right?
Yes. They also go into inlays of orb structures. Now, what most humans don't understand when they see orbs, oh, it's a ghost, it's a spirit. But if you look back far enough on my Facebook, and then of others who have cosmic calling codes and have seen this infrastructure, even the star unit itself I have proposed on showing, the lights, the manual lights of these orbs are actual delegated hyperdimensional beings, core depending on the color spectrum. You will know a difference between that orb or the mainframe of an actual spirit orb, or an aether orb of someone being an astral projection, because that's more clear coded, more white. The hyperdimensionals, you got to open up your auric balance frequency waves. The neural standard codes is third eye. Lining it up into the holographic standard, you'll be able to see it more physically. Like you had stated, the orbs are good one standard of their advanced being. Light blue to blue is Pleiades sector, Nordic. We're dealing with certain Martians. Red, or the tint of pink color, is Zeta Reticuli or gray infrastructure. The green is Talos Society, Tarot societies, higher societies that dwell from underneath this realm, that do exist in those core oceans, as well as certain placement codes in California, USA, certain placement codes down in the mountains in the Eastern Hemispheric realms dealing with China. We're close to the acquisition and other inlaid effects. Even the Mammoth Cave has to do with some replicated codes like that.
And is, I when we've talked about this in the past, and I've always paid attention to Antarctica, and I know you're limited on what you can say, but
that's one too.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, is Antarctica something we should currently be paying attention to, or is that just something that's just here and it's always been here and it'll always be here?
It's currently a foundation set by the Federation that humanity needs to leave alone for now, because it is set for what it needs to be set for, as that foundation to help set in priority and to place in priority what Federation stands for. There are certain aquafitted structures there that people don't need to get involved in right now, because it's to help further mankind in their processing stasis in the near future. So what I'm saying, it's a safety protocol place that should just be maintained as a safety protocol coordination, as is other lateral effects.
All right. Now, is this something we should fear, or is this something that we should?
It's part of a facility that will help mankind, but it does not need to be, everyone does not need to know about it, because you still got the bad codings out there. You get what I mean?
Right.
Put that out there, will screw it all up.
All right. Now, we've talked in the past about a good versus evil and how that comes out to play on our planet and with humans. Is there an easy way for somebody to tell, yeah, that person's not right, that person's working for the bad guys? Now, obviously, you can see that on occasion if you open up your eyes within our government. What I'm trying to say is that there's good and evil everywhere. I understand that, but is there more evil than good right now, or is there more good than evil, you think?
It's still unbalanced, but the sway is going towards good, if that sway can rectify itself. The more that people are opened up to the real truths, the more they can understand. Instead of pointing fingers at certain acquisition codes like Democrat, Republican, maintaining authority that there can be a better standard in light. They need to move forward from what their own lower encodings are for, and actually move to a more common lateral sense. Justified, stop pointing fingers. Justified, start paying attention to real propositions that can help each other out.
Well, one of the things I find fascinating is I follow politics a lot. I try not to bring politics into everything in my everyday life, but it affects us so greatly. My concern is that things that are happening in this world, like, for instance, they just signed this new act here called the Inflation Reduction Act. It does nothing to reduce inflation. As a matter of fact, it taxes people more. The Federal Reserve, it's not federal or reserve. These things are all working against us. But the common everyday guy who's, oh, that doesn't affect me, that's in Washington, or that law doesn't impact me, That's not so true, right? I mean, all these things you got to read between the lines. Just because it's titled something doesn't mean that's what it's about. They're hiding things. They're purposely, well, we put it out there. Well, yeah, you put it out there, but people gloss over stuff. People read headlines and come up with their own conclusions. They don't get into the nuts and bolts of things. That's a problem, isn't it?
Yes, especially if they pay attention. There are good aquatic codes amongst the bad on the news. They're there, but they have to look for the codes and clues, like you said, in between the lines. Because plus, in between the lines, if you pay attention close enough, you can see the bad codings that are going through it. That's why I said moving into a smarter universal codes, opening up your mind core better and paying more attention to what's being out there instead of just right up in front of you. You got to look around it, worm your way through it, and then find another articulated way. Because
No,
that's one thing that the lower codes don't have, that intelligence. To what those, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
All right, to what those that do have the intelligence, use it to your advantage.
I'm also a fan of history, and I know that sometimes history repeats itself. And I know that sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's a bad thing. Is that universal wide? Is that like everything's cyclical? Does that happen not just here on this planet, but throughout the entire universe, that history does in fact repeat itself?
Well, the core infinitum, or human calling codes to call God, runs at an alternation code, calling code course. Humans themselves, or Earthlings, are maintained in a revolving status unless they can be hyperlinked into a next upgrade. This is part of that compromised timeline that needs to be innovated. Yes, it's loopholes. There are timeline loopholes. It does go in reversal effects, but it depends on how it is inlaid through their neural structures, if they can maintain that. Most of other advanced species have got their upper graded linking codes intact. They don't have that same problem. They're moving forward, or some have just moved forward and dislodged altogether because of bad inlaid structure species, or they just lost their coding because they pretty much over time have died out or gone close to extinction.
You know, it's funny because I saw somebody put a quote out there not long ago saying that it's amazing how humans spend so much time inventing devices and viruses to kill each other and so little time on working on how to achieve peace. And you know, that's an impactful statement, and I agree with that. But again, I go back to my concern about the false flag possibility. Is it possible that some of these extraterrestrials that you're talking about, and I know like one that we talked about in the past that you indicated was evil was the Draco. Is it possible?
White weapons.
Is it possible that we can see like maybe Dracos are involved in this false flag incident? Is it out of the question to think that they would present themselves as coming in peace, but in reality, that's not the case?
Yes, it's absolute, because they only want their dignified way of things. Now, even in themselves were before once warriors and peacemakers, retaining and obtaining up to a modular scale life between each society. But as I said, because of certain rips in certain time continuums, and that their disadvantages of their maintainment codes on other grid spectrums, they have come to the conclusion that they want to find that it's better on this leg structure, when they alone should have known that their society, their own species, coexisted with other beings of light structure. They were warriors for a reason. They can maintain that again. All can be on better aquafit again if they learn to place their neural nodes into better retrospect, into better perspective.
Now, I've also seen some things recently here about our universe and our solar system and talking about how things are laid out. And I got to thinking, because I've seen images and I've seen people, and we've talked about the effects the sun has on everything and everyone. And I saw things saying that the sun that extraterrestrials can actually tap into our sun's energy and extract energy from our sun. Is that something we should be concerned with or no?
No, because if you're looking on my Facebook and other pages close to Space Force and the extraterrestrial department, as I had stated, we are mainframes here. We are in fusion states that work with the higher beings. That's why military parts, Space Force, Air Force has a lot to do with it. Certain militaries has a lot to do with it. They work alongside these beings. These beings live on these certain structures that move and maintain this grid and their hypermodulated status. Like the sun, linear grids goes through the Andromeda species, through certain Martianese species, mainly through the Pleiades structures and orders, hyper wavelengths that is not intactly. People think, oh, you're going to land on it, you're going to fry. That's not the case. These certain wavelengths are either ships jumping in and out of the hyper wavelength between us and what we lay with them so they can help motivate what needs to be placed here and just keep that intact, or the hyper wavelength movement speeds of what the delegated mainframes and lunar structure that deal with the hypermodulated Martians, grays, certain military and acovit that needs to be on that hyper aether mainframe. No, people should not be scared about this because this is prioritized for a reason. The missionary stasis of moving into the quantum age and hyper-integrating the moleculars to maintain mankind's next movement speeds.
Now, we talked about the sun. Does the moon come into play here? Are there
Yes,
extraterrestrials on the moon?
Yes, like I said, the Martianese, the Greys, intaculated certain military modulated stasis. They co-intaculate with each other, except through the moon, the certain electromagnetic frequencies between the hyper units that come in and out of it, or the actual frequencies inlaid through the aether and pulling out the spectrum itself, are different than that of the linear structure that needs to be intaculated. They run through certain dignified sources, but they are maintained physically on both certain human calling codes and extraterrestrial calling codes. Lunar, Martianese, Greys mainly, infrastructure humanoid stasis, some Pleiades structure. Sun, the Andromeda, high Nordic Pleiades structure, certain Talos societies, hyperlinked into the calling codes through that. Maybe even certain Anunnaki if they're in good calling codes and certain military.
Is there a time or a time frame in which we can expect things to really start moving more in a positive direction? Is it possible for you to forecast that now?
Well, like it says, all depends on how things are proclamized outward. The more information that's exposed, not just between myself, but all others that work for proper source light, whether it's, I want to say Republican, but on good standards, and the Cosmic, and the Federation, and whatever that needs to be opened up. Okay, we're not just here for the January 6th exposure. Think deeper. Think how we can really expose something on a Federation standard and make this come into reality. The quicker, the better.
Okay, great. Well, it's hard to believe, but we're almost out of time again here. We've had a great conversation today, I feel. Is there anything else you'd like to add to what we've talked about already today?
Yes, pay attention to who you are maintaining yourself for. Pay attention also to who you are pulling your neural waves and your neural standards on. Remember, societies can be maintained better and humans can be on better priority. They don't have to be keeping on ensnarement nodes constantly. And that there are much higher elevated species here that will do everything in their elite power to show humankind that this is not just an in-between red and blue statistic, the red or the blue pill. We are now showing and proving to humankind that there's a purple pill. There is a purple wave coming. And it is the way for mankind to really push himself together and maintain that proper peace and real generation to pulling their upgrades on better wavelengths to move up to a more freedomized society. but they have to see between the good and the bad and upload their speeds better and motivate this real Federation calling code. Because as Federation president, and what stands for on my Facebook is a reality. This thing's been going on for ages. The Federation's been before me. It's just been something that's been set in between and behind the scenes that now needs to be set into motion. And It's as simple as that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Blue, how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you? How can they find you?
You can find me at Blue Crystalline Phoenix on Facebook. I did have to recently switch Twitter accounts because I was pretty much hijacked at one time to where I could get my old account. I can't anymore, but the new account is on my Facebook. So you can either get me through Twitter, you can get me through Facebook, or my email, which is crystalllace009@gmail.com, only on emergency status, or if you're the inlay proof of that you need to know what's going on currently more with this Democrat myself prior to the 2 years. You're more than welcome on that graphical occasion.
Awesome. It was wonderful speaking with you again, Blue, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future, okay?
Absolutely, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Blue.